Yeah, there we go. All right. Just trying to give you guys a good picture here. But thank you all so much for being here. I'm San Francisco Mayor Lyndon Breed, and I am joined by the chief of our police department, Bill Scott, and our assistant sheriff, Tanzanika Carter from the sheriff's department, and the Alameda County Sheriff's Department, as well as the California Highway Patrol Chief, Don Goodbrand, to talk a little bit about not just all the incredible work that all of these various law enforcement agencies have been doing to help address the challenges that we are experiencing with sideshows, which not only include cars, but dirt bikes are also included as vehicles. They have been doing a great job in order to help address this issue. We are, in fact, seeing sideshows decline in San Francisco, and the number of vehicles that have been confiscated have doubled. Yet we know this problem continues to persist, especially in San Francisco and Alameda counties. We know that sideshows are dangerous, they are disruptive, and they are illegal. They are harmful for our neighborhoods, and to be very, very clear, they will not be tolerated. And it's not just about cars, as I said. We've also seen dirt bike, which are vehicles, do the same thing. Now, it's one thing to just ride your dirt bike along the city streets, stop at the stop signs, and follow the laws and the rules of the road. It's a whole nother thing when you see these dirt bikes ride in large numbers on sidewalks, barely missing pedestrians as they walk, and running red lights to a point where vehicles are trying to avoid hitting people on dirt bikes. This is extremely dangerous, and it is something that we also plan to address. And to be very clear, here in San Francisco, we are fortunate, thanks to the voters for passing Proposition E. We now have tools that we are able to use, including drones, surveillance technology, license plate readers, and other things that will assist us at combating this issue. And we will use those tools effectively like we have been. It has led to remarkable results in the reduction of car break-ins and a number of other returned vehicles. The department has been doing a great job with technology, and in this particular case, it will be no different. We will use every tool that we have and every law that we have in order to stop and disrupt the sideshows that are happening in our city. Now, we're doing this through legislative action here locally. We know that we'd like to go further, and we'd like to use federal laws state laws in order to help make this thing as problematic as possible, but we are going to make it very uncomfortable, very inconvenient for these sideshows to happen. I'm introducing legislation here in San Francisco to do 4 things. To make it illegal to participate in promoting sideshows. This will help our officers who are already tracking these efforts online and hopefully deter people from organizing them in the first place. So if you are an organizer, we are coming for you too. We will make it illegal to participate in assembling for a sideshow. So if you are one of those vehicles that are trying to obstruct other vehicles from coming through and you're just blocking it with your car, or you're there in any way, this means cars that obstruct the streets to set up for sideshows will also now face criminal penalties. And we will make it illegal to impede law enforcement from doing their jobs to disrupt sideshows. So if you are using those lasers to try and blind our officers, if you are trying to do anything to stop a vehicle, stand in front of a vehicle, all of those things will count as impeding law enforcement's ability to do the work that they're there to do to stop and disrupt these sideshows, and you will be held to account. We will extend the amount of time the city can hold a vehicle seized in a sideshow. Right now, we have to return a vehicle within 30 days. And now, with our district attorney's support, we are charging the law so that the DA can keep the cars longer, and if there is a conviction, the car can be seized permanently. So we are coming after everything that we can, whether it's your car or your dirt bike or what have you. We welcome the opportunity for people to ride the streets of San Francisco safely, but when you start crossing those lines, we will take action and we will be aggressive. So here at this time, I want our Police Chief, Bill Scott, to talk a little bit about what we've already been doing, the partnership that we have, so that the public can really understand the challenges that we have with trying to disrupt and address these sideshows as they occur, and more importantly, how significant this legislation will be if passed by the Board of Supervisors, can be implemented as soon as possibly October and November at the absolute latest. So with that, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Chief Bill Scott.
Thank you. Excuse me. Thank you, Mayor. And good morning, everybody. I want to introduce a few more people in addition to those that the Mayor just introduced, just so you know who's up here and why. And I'll go from my right here. On my right, I have Commander Nicole Jones. She's in charge of our traffic company, and they are responsible for investigating these sideshows. To her right, there's Lieutenant Anthony Holder. He is in charge of our stunt driving response unit. So he is the leader when these things come, when these sideshows come to our city. He and his unit are the ones that break them up and disrupt them and then investigate after the fact to seize vehicles and file criminal charges when that is applicable. And I'll talk more in detail about that in a minute. To his right is Sergeant Dan Guzman. He's one of our investigators and does a great job in tracking these cars down, tracking people down who commit these illegal acts. And he has also spearheaded a campaign where when vehicles are seen at sideshows, even as spectators, the registered owner receives a letter advising them that their vehicle's at a sideshow. And the reason I want to highlight that is the mayor's legislation will be an enhancement to just writing a letter, because now we will actually be able to, with the passage of this legislation, conduct criminal investigations when these letters go out and possibly take action, either arrest or impound cars when they are present at a sideshow. On my left, I have Assistant Chief David Lazar, who you all know. He is in charge of our operations. I have Commander Khalid Rashid from the California Highway Patrol. Yeah, he is in charge of the San Francisco office. I have Sergeant Fenton Cully from the Alameda County Sheriff's Regional Sideshow Enforcement Task Force. And to his left is Deputy Fenton Cully, who also works in a task force and has been a great partner in sharing some of their methodologies and techniques with us. And we put that to use in terms of getting our technology on the ground. So now that you have the landscape of who's up here, let me go into some details about our sideshows, what we have been doing and what we plan to do in the future. First of all, thanks again, Mayor Breed, for your leadership. If this legislation passes, I think this will be another step to allow us in the city of San Francisco to do what we need to curb and prevent these sideshows from coming in our city. No legislation in and of itself is going to do that alone, and that's why we have partnerships with all of our partners here and then some to make sure that we are all working in collaboration as a team, because these sideshows aren't aren't specifically germane to San Francisco. They're in Alameda County, they're in the South Bay, and they go back and forth. They're on the bridges, they're on our freeways, and the bottom line is everywhere where these events occur, there's a tremendous danger to the public and to our officers that are responding to break up these sideshows and arrest the violators. So we have to put a stop to this. We have to curb this, and we have to deter people from doing these type of activities. It's not easy work. These events are unacceptable, and as we work closer with our partners, we are going to deploy some new strategies. Now, the Mayor Breed mentioned Proposition E and how our department, in the short span of less than 5 months, we now have a drone program. We plan to take full advantage of using that technology to enhance our ability to identify cars and people that are involved in these sideshows, and more importantly, to seize cars, and make arrests. And we fully believe that we will be able to do that more effectively because of the voters' passage of Proposition E. Our communication with our partners that you see here has always been good, but we want to go to the next level in that communication. As far as the San Francisco Police Department, we are short-staffed, and I venture to say that every agency represented here and across the Bay Area has that same problem. That's why it's even more important that we work closer together and we're more efficient and effective as a collaborative to deal with these sideshows. So in doing that, our first priority is figuring out where these sideshows will occur or are occurring, so we have the adequate time to coordinate, to collaborate, and rally our resources. This is where we really need the public's help. If you see an assembly of a large group of dirt bikers or vehicles, even if they're not committing the illegal activity, that's the precursor. And you can call it in as suspicious activity, so we have a heads up and we can start getting our resources together to deal with that situation. Please call us. Online, if you come across any of this information online, we ask that you think about the safety, your own safety, the safety of your family members, the safety of your loved ones, the safety of these officers that have to deal with this day in and day out, and call us. We need people to report. A sideshow is not a single car doing donuts. You call in on that too. We ask that you call in on that too, but I want to make a distinction because there has been confusion on that. We get sometimes one or two cars or one car that's doing donuts or doing stunts in the middle of a public street, and people will call it in as a sideshow. We will respond to that and we will take action if we catch that person or that individual, but that is not a sideshow. And sometimes when those type of events go viral on social media, they get reported as a sideshow. I just want to be clear on when I say sideshows are down, we're talking about large assemblages of people and cars or motorcycles that are doing dangerous stunts. That is a sideshow, an illegal activity. Let me explain too our tactics, and at least as much as I can explain here, so the public is aware of what we do and how we respond. I probably said 3 or 4 times now how dangerous these situations are, and oftentimes there's either a single officer or 2 officers or even 5 or 10 officers that are responding to these incidents, and there are hundreds of people, sometimes literally 300-400 people in cars. It's a very dangerous situation for our officers, and we will not ask 5 officers to go in a group of 100 people that often turn hostile when we get there and try to resolve that situation without the adequate resources. That's just a recipe for disaster. It's a recipe for failure, and somebody is going to get hurt. And in addition to that, officers oftentimes get surrounded. We've seen patrol cars that have been tipped over, vandalized, officers having projectiles being shot at. Look, we do a dangerous job when we realize that. We take on that danger when we raise our right hand and swear to the oath of office. But we owe it to our officers not to send them into situations where it's going to be an absolute failure because we don't have adequate resources. So our strategy and our tactics, number 1, we're going to take advantage of technology. Number 2, Lieutenant Holder and his team, that's what they do. They assemble enough people so they can resolve the situation peacefully. Our first and foremost objective is to break up the illegal activity. We want to chase them away and flush them out of the city. We catch who we can catch, we arrest who we arrest, but usually when we get there, everybody just goes in all directions. So we have to make sure that that is done as safely as we can force the situation to be safe. A lot of times, people are fleeing at high rates of speed, they drive on the wrong side of the road, they're getting up on sidewalks. It is really reckless and dangerous behavior. That is where the back end, I'll call it the back end investigations come to play. Sergeant Guzman does an outstanding job. When we have the evidence, we get a judge to sign a court order and we go and seize those vehicles. And year to date, we have seized 67 of such vehicles, either for reckless evading or being directly involved in these sideshows. And that will continue, and we expect that number to be higher because now we have the technology, thanks to the mayor and the voters, we have the technology to do more in that arena. The other thing is, here's what we know from experience. The longer we let these groups stay assembled, the more damage they usually cause. Vandalism, like we had at the Embarcadero a couple of months. Shots fired, shootings. We've had murders at these events. Sideshows, we've had murders, we've had shootings, we've had assaults. So that's why it is imperative that we break these events up as quickly as possible and keep people moving. Now, sometimes, to our dismay, we'll have 200 people. Our officers will come in and flush them out, and then one group will splinter into 4 or 5 groups, and it becomes even more challenging for us because it spreads our resources. But that's what collaboration is all about, because if they go to another city, let's say Alameda County, we're going to communicate and let them know that they're coming. If they go on the Golden Gate Bridge, I think we've done a fabulous job working with the Highway Patrol, making sure we're communicating so they're ready for them, and then they can do what they need to do, and it gives them time to assemble their resources to do this as safely as possible. Here's the point here. What I want the public to know, because I've been in so many community meetings and I see social media and I see on the, and you name your form of media, that the police department isn't doing anything. They're not doing enough. It's really important for you to understand how we do what we do and why. The why is for your safety and for the safety of our officers to try to break these events up as safely as possible. Sure, we would love to arrest everybody that's committing illegal activity, but sometimes that desire to arrest can cause us to make mistakes that get people hurt. And the bottom line is, before anything else, we don't want to see anybody lose their lives or be hurt because of this reckless and dangerous activity. And we definitely don't want to contribute to people being hurt. So our tactics are designed for safety, the officer safety, designed to do what we can with the resources we have, to be as effective as we can with the resources we have, and that's why we do it that way. As we get more officers, as our collaborations get better, as our technology becomes greater, there'll come a day where we'll be able to make a lot more arrests, or we'll do specialized operations when that time comes and when we have the resources to do that. But in the meantime, we're going to go after people involved in these sideshows with all the gusto that we can and make sure that those that we can identify, that those cars are seized. If there's a criminal conviction with the passage of this legislation, they will be seized permanently. Again, for those of you that have received letters, and we've sent over 300 letters since we started doing this campaign, we've heard from parents who have said they didn't know their cars were being used like that because their kids or whoever they let drive the car were doing this type of activity, and they were totally unaware. In the future, your car may be seized. In the future, whoever's driving your car may end up on the wrong side of a prosecution. So please be aware of who you turn over your keys to and make it known that you don't want your vehicle involved in this type of activity. Particularly if you get the letter, then you should be advised that your car is being used in that manner. Now, as I close this, I want to just say, call 911 if you see an illegal sideshow. These things are dangerous. As I just described, we've had deaths, we've had shootings, severe vandalism. In addition to that, we've had officers that have lasers in their eyes, fireworks thrown at officers and members of the public. I mean, we've had all kind of criminal activity with these sideshows. They are dangerous. That is a 911 call. That is an emergency that we need to get to right now. If you see an assembly, you call the non-emergency number, call 311, so we can get our resources in place, and our team and our officers and the Highway Patrol or whatever your jurisdiction is, they can do what they need to do to try to prevent these things from happening, because that's how we break them up before they start doing damage, and we keep them moving. And then lastly, again, if you can take pictures, because it's the photos of license plates, vehicle descriptions, oddities and peculiarities of those vehicles that give us the ability to identify specific vehicles that we can go when we do our investigation and get the seizure orders for. So take pictures if you can, but do it safely. Don't put yourself in any jeopardy when you take pictures. And with that, I would, one other thing before I forget this, and this is an important point. In the city of San Francisco, we have license plate readers. And before long, we'll have over 400, and then hopefully we will expand that. These counties, Alameda County and other counties that we work with, they also have license plate readers. We share information. That has been a huge, huge help to us. This is why it's so important to take the pictures, because if we get a vehicle in our system and we can identify a vehicle that has been involved in illegal activity, particularly assaultive activity, we put that in our system and all of us share that information. And if that vehicle is alerted on our ALPR cameras, because we don't only need license plates, we put vehicle descriptions in there as well, it makes it a lot easier for us to identify that vehicle. So I want to make sure that the public understands why it's so important to bring that information forward. So again, thank you all for being here. I want to thank our partners for being here, thank our mayor for the leadership to get in front of this, and we will now open it up for questions.
Because we have a pretty limited amount of time. All these hard-working officers need to get back to work, so we're going to have to keep it pretty short. So bear with us. Jesse?
Chief, you mentioned several points. Use of technology, assembling enough people to resolve the situation peacefully. Were there two other points that you were going to put on that?
The use of technology, and what I said at the end about our use of both the flock cameras, our drones, the technology has expanded. So that's why it's so important for people to share what they can with us, pictures, photos, so we can get those vehicles in the system, which makes our use of technology even more efficient.
So in the Sunday's massive motorbikes and ATVs, one of the things, I'm going to ask, I guess, kind of a compound question. First off, what are the challenges trying to deal with those? Because obviously it's a little bit more difficult to kind of corral that. And then secondly, people who took pictures and shared videos also show that they don't have plates. Like a lot of these bikes don't have plates. Some of the cars associated didn't have plates. What's the challenge in trying to deal with that?
Yeah, no, that's a huge challenge when they don't have plates. Some of those bikes that we have been able to seize and impound are stolen. So that's another challenge for us. It's a very difficult situation with those dirt bikes and the motorcycles. Dirt bikes in particular, because they go off-road, they go on sidewalks, they get on the wrong side of the road. So we're constantly trying to develop better tactics to deal with that. But at the end of all this, when we have time to respond, and that's why it's so important to call, we can better respond. A lot of times when we get the call, the sideshow is already happening. And if our officers see it, what the public doesn't know is there have been a number of these sideshows that we have prevented from happening, so it doesn't become a story because it doesn't happen. But the reason that happens because our officers were alerted by whatever form of information that they were alerted by, and Lieutenant Holder and his team, they had time to get there and assemble. And we had time to call CHP and say, hey, they're coming up on the Bay Bridge or they're going up on the Golden Gate Bridge. They have time to assemble. So it doesn't happen, and you all don't report about it because nothing ever happens. We've had some victories that way, and I would prefer that rather than to have you here like we are now, because we've had too many of them. But to get back to your question, the key is getting information to us as quickly as possible so we can assemble our team and try to prevent it, disrupt it, keep them moving if they assemble, and impound those cars that we can impound safely, and arrest the people we can arrest safely.
Right over here.
Chief, can you clarify how many arrests have been made? How many cars have been seized or impounded, especially with the new technology that you're using? You mentioned 300 letters have gone out.
Yes, we've impounded 67 cars year to date, reckless evading, and some of that is involved in sideshows or when they were fleeing from sideshows. So 67 year to date. I don't have we have not made a lot of arrests. We've made some. We hope to increase the number of arrests, and that's where our technology is so important, because now we can see things that we weren't able to see before. And I'll go into a little detail on that. We get to a sideshow, and there's hundreds of cars, hundreds of motorcycles. We can't just send an officer in the middle of that. We get surrounded, we've been assaulted, and without technology, it's even hard to see who's doing what. With our drones, we can zoom in on clothes, on facial features, on who's driving the car without putting an officer in danger. So that's why we're so excited about having the use of this technology. And we got to get caught up. Alameda County, we spent some time with them last month to see how they do what they do, and they do a great job. We now have the ability to do that, so we believe it's going to make us more effective to make more arrests. There are a lot of hurdles to get to that point, and like I said, thanks to the mayor and where we are with Proposition E, with our voters' passage of that, we think we're well on our way to being able to actually identify more people and make more arrests.
We got time for two more questions over here.
Whenever we interview someone like a resident along Embarcadero, they always take the videos of the sideshow, and they always, like you mentioned, they'll show officers in the distance and say, look, they're doing nothing. What's your message to those residents? Because it sounds like on the back end, there's going to be a lot being done to make arrests and seize vehicles, but people are probably still going to be woken up at 2 a.m. or 3 a.m.
Yes, thank you. And look, I'm not at all dismissive of what people are experiencing, because it's very disruptive. It's very disruptive. But I want the public to know we are doing something, but our tactics maybe don't satisfy people because they don't see us rush in and try to corral people. When you don't have enough resources, it just makes it too dangerous, and too dangerous for everybody. Because think about this, a lot of the injuries that happen with sideshows are happening when people are trying to get away from us. We're aware of that. We force the situation and the driver gets on a freeway or one-way street, and then there's a head-on collision or some unsuspected pedestrian or motorist gets run over. That's on our conscience as well. So we have to be very careful about how we do this. And I know it can be frustrating when people see officers waiting on additional resources, because most of the time, that's what's happening. The first car gets there, they have to wait on additional resources. And then when we have enough resources where we can start flushing people out, that's what we do. I just need the public to understand why we do it that way. Hopefully with that understanding, they'll be a little bit more patient, that we're trying to do it as safely as possible. But we are doing some work, particularly on the back end. We want to keep people moving, break up these sideshows as quickly as possible, and as soon as we have enough resources to do that, we do that. The other thing is, when they break up on Spinner, a lot of times, because of how Lieutenant Holder and his teams are working, we prevent them from happening in other parts of the city, because when we follow them and we know what the traditional hot spots are, we have officers there waiting, and then they go to the next spot. And then we call our friends at the Highway Patrol and say they're about to get on the bridge, and they're there waiting for them. So we want to keep people running. We want them not to be comfortable that they can go anywhere in this Bay Area and have 300 people on a block or on the street taking over a community. And so it's a work in progress, but we're going to get there.
Final question.
Chief, I know you mentioned that not a lot of arrests have yet been made, but you do anticipate more to be. But for the individuals who are involved in this type of activity, what are some of the penalties, I know it depends case by case, that they could face should an arrest be made, and a message to those individuals who are thinking of participating in this activity in the future?
Well, that really depends on the crime that's been committed, because we've seen a variety of crimes. Reckless driving in and of itself is a crime, but if you hurt somebody and you get convicted of that, penalties are going to be higher, and as well they should be. People that commit acts of vandalism. We've had a tremendous amount of property damage associated with these sideshows, so that's another place where technology is going to help. I don't even know what the cost to the city is on the cleanup of all this stuff, because we are committed to getting this stuff cleaned up and helping our business owners, and that's one of the things that the mayor is very, very committed to do, is get the damage fixed and cleaned up. So I don't even know what that cost is, but to answer your question, it really depends on the crime. If it's a violent crime, an assault, higher penalties, higher risks of state prison, but it really depends on the crime.